Today I'm going to show you how to pull a cleaner key using a green or a blue screen on the color page in DaVinci Resolve 17. Part 1. High Quality Qualification. This little dropper here is the qualifier, and if we click it, we'll open the qualifier menu. This is where we'll be doing most of the work for this key. This is a very powerful tool right out of the box like this, but if we really want a clean key, we're probably going to want to give it some help. In order to do that, we're going to select our 3D qualifier key with this little button right here, then come up to our node web and make a new node, which we will then color for keying. This isn't necessarily going to look good or look anything like what you want the finished grade to look like. We're only going to be using this node to pull our key, so we're going to do our absolute best to make our subject not look like our background. I'm talking pumped saturation, enhanced contrast, maybe reduced contrast. Don't be afraid to make this look gross as long as you're making it easier for the qualifier tool to know where you stop and the screen starts. Once we're happy with the amount of separation, go ahead and right-click somewhere in the node web and click Add Alpha Output. Then drag our blue square here into our new alpha output. Once that's connected, we'll double check that we have the qualifier tool selected, then bring our cursor into our viewer and define our key. All you have to do that is click and drag around your key area until everything is selected. If you let go of your drag and don't want to reselect the entire thing, you can come down to your qualifier menu and click this little dropper with the plus sign next to it to add strokes to your qualification. If you overselect, you can remove colors from your qualification with the minus dropper next to that. You'll want to invert your selection so that you aren't keeping only the color you're trying to get rid of, and you should press Shift-H to see your qualification more easily. Once you're pretty happy with your selection, we're going to go refine this bad boy in Part 2, Finessing the Matte. You may have noticed this other stuff going on in the qualifier menu while we've been moving around. These are your matte finesse controls, and they are the little tweaks that can take a key from good to great. I'll go over what they do because in my experience, a lot of people have never touched these before. Starting at the top, we have pre-filter. This is useful if your footage is lacking a little bit in the quality department, whether that's from resolution or artifacting or anything else that would make this tough, because it goes in before any colors are looked at and attempts to automatically clean things up so you can get a better key. Clean black is going to help clean up the black part of your matte. If I turn on the matte black and white view here, you can see very clearly what that means. When we bring it up, the black area of the mask, the part we keyed out, tightens up on the white areas of the matte, the part we didn't key out. If you didn't get the cleanest key and you have little speckles of your keyed color floating around out here, the clean black control will help you get rid of those. Clean white does essentially the opposite. If you have small areas in the white section of your matte that are being keyed, which are similar to the keyed color, you might get some speckling in here. And if we bring up our clean white slider, we'll see those speckles go away. When we do this, our white matte region does grow a bit, so we'll have to touch up our edges with some tools we'll get to in a moment. Black clip is going to bring things that are in the gray area of this matte closer to black. So if something is almost keyed, this will help it go away. And white clip will do the same, but bring gray area things further away from being keyed out. Blur radius can be your best friend, but it can also be your worst enemy. Think of this like feathering your mask. It can fix overly sharp edges, but it can also do this and cause a very obvious feathering effect. In-out ratio tells blur radius where to do its work. If the number is 0, the blur will be applied evenly inside and outside the edge of your matte. If it's above 0, the blur will only affect the outside of your matte edge. And if it's below 0, it'll only affect the inside of your matte edge. This can be super useful if you need some blur but don't want to have to deal with that feather effect. This tool also functions like a micro clean black and clean white tool while there's no blur applied. If we bring it above 0, we get rid of some black speckle, and if we bring it below 0, we'll get rid of some white speckles. Those are essential to learn and get comfortable with if you're going to be doing a lot of keying in Resolve. Moving on down, we get to Morph Operation, which is this little drop-down menu right here. We have 4 options in here: Shrink, Grow, Opening, and Closing. Shrink brings the edges of your matte in, Grow pushes the edges of your matte out. Opening opens up speckles or other small holes in the matte, and Closing shrinks those speckles or small holes back down. Morph Radius is the amount your selected morph operation affects your matte. Shadow, midtone, and highlight look at your original image and adjust the strength of your key based on those parts of that image. And post filter cleans it up. This is the icing on the cake. It'll pull some finer details like hair or other things like that back into the visible part of your image. Okay, I know that was a huge info dump, but now it's there to reference if you need it in the future. Now that we know what they do, let's get into using them to bring the matte we made earlier into that, oh wow, that looks good range. This will be unique to you, so I'm going to speed mine up a bit. You'll still be able to see my changes and what they do, but I'd imagine you don't want to hear me say all of that stuff again. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. If we zoom in on the edges here, we can see that this key is clean. Now that we have that to a point that we like, let's bring the whole thing together in part 3, the node tree. We have our one well-qualified, poorly graded node that we added, but we definitely don't want our final output to look like this. To get around this very useful but very ugly node, we'll right-click somewhere out here and add a new corrector node. Take that green output from your first untouched node and drag it into your new corrector's green input. Then drag that new corrector's green input into your green master output over here. Now, if we go to the edit page and drag something under our clip, we can see that it's still keyed out because we're using the alpha channel from the qualified node and the visible channels from this corrector node. So if we make some changes to the colors and whatnot in the corrector node, we see those changes happen, but they don't break our key. We can make whatever changes we want down here. We can add more nodes. We could do a whole full node web down here as long as we don't touch that first node or the qualifier node. And that allows us to grade our clip however we want and still have a very clean key working on our footage. You can actually export this with its alpha channel intact through Resolve so that you can superimpose this over anything you want. To do that, you should watch this video right here. I'll see you over there.